In today's day and age, American society has a large focus on sports and a strong cultural tie to their influences. We idolize the biggest stars and even shame the biggest losers. We identify with sports teams of our areas and make connections with other people based on common likes and dislikes of sports figures. Throughout history, there has been a huge controversy in every sport imaginable. These controversies don't just give us things to talk about, they also bring into question the values and priorities that come with the conversations about sports as a whole. The Supreme Court case of PGA Tour Incorporated versus Martin explores the boundaries of the argument for and against the special treatment of disabled persons in sports, and represents a larger perspective on where these people stand in the eyes of American society. Because of the economic, cultural, and sociological factors that surround the golf community, there was a pushback against the decision in favor of Martin. But the nature of the decision represented a minority group that is often discriminated against by private organizations. Casey Martin is the head golf coach at Oregon University as of 2006, and has been influencing the college team that has had enormous success with his instruction in recent years. Under Martin, the Oregon Ducks won the NCAA Men's Division I Golf Championship in 2016. The head coach comes from a background of success on the professional golf scene, whereas he has competed in 43 PGA tournaments total and 29 PGA tournaments in 2000 alone, as well as during college when he competed for Stanford University in California. Martin accomplished all of this and more in spite of a physical disability that brought about the highly controversial lawsuit that received a Supreme Court ruling. Casey Martin was diagnosed as a child with Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome in his legs, which is a condition that affects the development of blood vessels, soft tissues, such as skin and muscles, and bones. This condition is not fatal, but it is nothing to be taken lightly. Casey's medical problems limit his ability to walk for fair distances without experiencing pain, and although he finds himself very limited by his state of affairs, Martin continues to pursue his golfing career with as much rigor as ever.
Leading up to it, we've had a really rough winter in Oregon, very wet, and I said we're going to be the best prepared team for this because we've had to deal with some adversity, and so I said, guys, as difficult as it's been, let's use it to our advantage, and so I think unfortunately, they've been kind of used to it. Maybe not snow and sleet, but they've been used to rain and some adversity. So sometimes, even though it's difficult, it can really benefit you.
The PGA Tour was founded in 1929 and has a large history of great players and traditions. As an organization, the PGA Tour boasts an impressive Hall of Fame, including competitors from Tiger Woods to the record holder for most Masters tournament wins, Jack Nicklaus. The importance of golf to American culture is made apparent by the sum total of 60 Masters wins that the United States holds, in comparison to Spain, who has the second highest of 5. In order to compete on the PGA Tour that hosts tournaments year-round all across North America and beyond, players like Martin need to compete in a 3-stage qualifying tournament called Q School. Entry to this tournament requires 2 letters of recommendation and paying a $3,000 entry fee to cover greens fees and the cost of golf carts. During the Q School stage, Martin was allowed, without question, to use a cart, and thrived throughout the whole stage, shooting multiple below-par scores. But, upon reaching the PGA Tour Championships, his request for the use of a cart, because of his physical problems, was declined by the PGA Tour, which further led to the filing of a lawsuit by Martin against the private organization. As with most professional sports, golf is highly lucrative and competitive at its highest level. The PGA Tour is put on by sponsors who assume all the risks of all the payouts, including prize money and labor costs, and hope that the revenue might surpass the costs. Prize money on the tour is awarded in decreasing amounts from 1st place to 70th place. The greats of the sport, like Jack Nicklaus, also one of the most famous golfers of all time, has a net worth of $300 million due to his repeated wins at tournaments such as these. And Tiger Woods has a net worth of $740 million and was ranked the 12th highest paid athlete in 2016, according to Forbes magazine. Not only do golfers receive prize money from winning the tour, but often the most famous and highly paid receive personal sponsors from companies like Nike, Adidas, Titleist, and Puma. As a private organization, the PGA Tour Incorporated has to worry about finding sponsors as well as platforms on which to broadcast their showing to the public audience. Having Casey Martin compete under special circumstances creates feelings of resentment among many in the golf community, which may hurt the PGA Tour as a business. Others in competition with Martin may feel that the use of a cart gives him an unfair advantage, and that it may help him acquire the prize money that they compete for. But the question must be asked, is it, after all, fair to disallow him these conditions of play after his success in the previous stages of the tournament? Martin's case challenges the norms of golf conduct and play, which worries private organizations at a high level that are very economically focused. The game of golf has a prominent history, with an invention date sometime in the 15th century in Scotland, and the oldest championship, called the British Open, first being played in 1860. Along with this history comes a well-developed idea of how the game should be played. Golfing giant Arnold Palmer argued that using a cart would give Martin an advantage and undermine a fundamental part of the game. This is a popular opinion among the golfing community, seeing as when a Golf Digest survey was put out with the question, "Do you agree with the US Supreme Court decision on Casey Martin?" A majority of 52% of the respondents disagreed with the decision, and only 47% said they agreed with the decision. There was a large pushback and worry from the golf community that the integrity of the game was being violated, and a plethora of players may attempt to gain advantage and exploit the decision by using minor physical problems to acquire a cart. Walking is considered by many to be a big part of the game, and therefore, many believe that Martin's use of a cart is violating some foundational principle of the game. During Martin's golfing career at Stanford, the conference in which he competed waived rules requiring players to walk and carry their own clubs. When Martin made it to the third stage of Q School, the preliminary three-stage PGA qualifying tournament, his request to use a cart was denied by the PGA. The use of a cart was only brought into question when Martin reached this high level of play at the professional scene. Disabilities in sports are a long debated topic, with disabilities in the workforce being an even larger one. Martin's case represents a cross between the two because of his unique position where a sport acts as his source of income and a major hobby. In 1990, the Americans with Disability Act was enacted, which protected the rights of disabled persons in matters dealing with private organizations that may prevent them from having the same rights as those without disabilities. It stated that, historically, society has tended to isolate and segregate individuals with disabilities, and, despite some improvements, such forms of discrimination against individuals with disabilities continue to be a serious and pervasive social problem. In most cases, disabilities are out of the person in question's control, which makes it so that they cannot function normally even though they are merely a victim of circumstance. The ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, was one of the first major attempts at securing further civil rights for the disabled. But there is still a debate over the point at which people should be assisted in society even though they have disabilities, if they could just as easily move to another profession. Casey Martin no longer competes on the PGA Tour and now coaches at the University of Oregon. Did he ever need to compete on the tour to get this position and make a lucrative livelihood? Regardless, there is the counter-argument that he should be helped in what ways that are possible in order to pursue his passion. As a long-standing and long-appreciated sport, golf finds much more controversy when it comes to change because of its conservative crowd. As a celebrity, Casey is in the unique position of being able to fight against opposition because of his platform of wealth and credibility. Many other disabled persons do not have these same capabilities that Martin does, so the prominence of his willingness to fight for a cause and represent his minority group proves that much more important. At the end of the trial, the case was decided on the grounds of the aforementioned Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, with the verdict statement from the judge first saying, "The critical question in this case is whether it would fundamentally alter either the game of golf in general or the competition in athlete tournaments that the PGA sponsors to waive the walking rule for Martin and allow him to use a cart." Then following with, "The sole purpose of the walking rule is to make a fatigue factor in the competition, and Martin incurs greater fatigue than his competitors even if he is allowed to use a cart." With this decision, the Supreme Court reinforced the Americans with Disabilities Act on a larger scale, and thereby set a tone for future matters between the disabled and private organizations. Casey Martin acts as a model for those who are disabled and still trying to pursue a career in private organizations. His case stands as a marker to show that people with disabilities are now being extended more civil rights and assistance in their attempts to live lives that are as close to as normal as possible.